In the silent glow of the royal candles, where perfume hides the stench of blood, there lived a queen whose beauty masked a monster. Her name was Fredegund, the Serpent Queen of France. History remembers her not for grace but for venom. She rose from being a lowly servant to the most feared woman in all of the Frankish kingdom. In the 6th century, while kings fought with swords, Fredegund fought with whispers, and every whisper she made ended in someone's death. She wasn't born of royal blood. She stole her crown, and every life that stood in her way. They say she seduced King Chilperic I, the ruler of Neustria, while serving his wife, Queen Odavara. But love had nothing to do with it. Fredegund's desire was not for the man, but for the throne. And so, one night, Odavara vanished. Some said she was sent away. Others whispered that she was murdered, on Fredegund's command. From that moment, the serpent began to coil. As queen, Fredegund unleashed her hunger for power with a cruelty that shocked even her own court. She plotted assassinations like a composer writing symphonies, every death, a note in her song of domination. She didn't spare women, priests, or children. Even her own stepchildren became victims of her poison. When the king's sons began to question her influence, they were found dead, one by one. And when her husband took another lover, Galswintha, the sister of Queen Brunhilde of Austrasia, Fredegund's rage turned to murder once again. Galswintha was found strangled in her bed, her jewels missing, her body still warm. The court trembled. The kingdom fell silent. For the first time in history, the throne of France was ruled not by a king's sword, but by a queen's cunning, and every life around her became disposable. But what made her truly terrifying was not just her cruelty, it was her calmness. Fredegund could order a killing in the morning, and cradle her child by evening. She wasn't a queen, she was an empire wrapped in silk, moving like a shadow through the corridors of power, her smile sharper than any blade. And yet, the blood she spilled would not be forgotten, for the woman she wronged, Queen Brunhilde, would soon rise as her eternal enemy. The murder of Queen Galswintha didn't just stain Fredegund's hands, it ignited a war that would burn for decades. From the ashes of that death rose a new enemy, Brunhilde, Galswintha's sister, a queen whose vengeance would haunt Fredegund until her last breath. France was now divided, 2 kingdoms, 2 queens, and a hatred deeper than any wound. On one side stood Fredegund, the serpent who whispered death. On the other, Brunhilde, the lioness who refused to kneel. What began as a royal rivalry soon became a battlefield soaked in blood. Fredegund's husband, King Chilperic I, at first stood beside her, blinded by her beauty and poisoned by her lies. But even kings are not safe from the serpent's bite. When Chilperic began to drift from her influence, he too met an untimely end, stabbed to death in the shadows of his own palace. No one saw who did it, but everyone knew. Fredegund didn't need to wield the dagger, her will was sharper than steel. And now, with her husband gone, Fredegund ruled through fear. Ministers obeyed, nobles trembled, and even priests crossed themselves when she entered the room. They said her eyes could turn mercy into murder. That when she smiled, somewhere someone was about to die. But Brunhilde would not rest. She rallied armies, married kings, and turned her vengeance into politics. France, once united, fell into chaos, 2 queens tearing it apart, one through rage, the other through cunning. And still, Fredegund's cruelty grew. When her own son, the young King Clotaire II, disobeyed her orders, she didn't weep, she punished. When a nobleman's wife insulted her at court, she was stripped naked and beaten to death in front of the palace gates. When an infant prince threatened her son's claim to the throne, the baby was torn from its cradle and executed on her command. To the people, she was no longer a queen, she was a curse. The serpent had devoured everything, love, loyalty, and even her own soul. But every serpent meets its blade. As Brunhilde's forces closed in, Fredegund's world began to crumble. Her allies abandoned her, her armies fell apart, and for the first time, the queen who ruled by fear began to fear herself. Still, she refused to kneel. Even in her final days, when illness consumed her body, she gave one last order: to assassinate Brunhilde, her rival to the end. She died before the plot could unfold. When word of her death spread, the kingdom didn't mourn. They buried her in the church she had built, but the priests whispered that the candles near her tomb never stayed lit, as if the flame itself rejected her memory. Fredegund, the Serpent Queen of France, the woman who rose from a servant's dust to the crown of blood, left behind not a dynasty, but a warning. Power can make a queen, but only poison keeps her on the throne. They called her a queen, but history remembers her as something else. A whisper in the dark, a shadow behind every royal curtain. Fredegund, the servant who became a queen, and then a monster. She built her throne not on gold, but on graves. She ruled not through love, but through fear. And in the end, even the church could not cleanse the blood that soaked her crown. But maybe that's what power truly is. The art of losing your humanity piece by piece, until there's nothing left to burn, but your own soul. As centuries passed, her name faded from books, but her legend slithered on, in whispers and nightmares, in every ruler who thought they could conquer loyalty with terror. Because the Serpent Queen may have died, but the poison she left behind still flows, in every palace, in every throne, and perhaps, in every heart that dares to crave power. This was Throne Unknown.